recommendation would be.
We can drive there, bring all our food, and everything, but it's the boat on the water.
Yeah.
We're aware of the splash pad. He said, if they don't allow us to open the splash pad, people are just going to crack open the fire hydrant. What's the difference? You might as well have a control where it's treated water.
Well, to my point, let's say we can't open up the beach. Okay, so we don't open up the beach. We're not going to hire all these lifeguards, but then we've got people we can hire at an hourly, now you become an attendant out there. Now you're going to be out there in a swimsuit, just like you'd be at the beach, but now you're going to.
I'm sure that'll be required.
Right, so.
This is going to be the rare time when the Rangers are going to be out on the golf course going, slow down.
Yeah.
That's okay.
You're playing too fast.
Elmar, do you think the audio is better for people dialing in on the phone or on the computer audio?
It depends on how they're connected.
But will the phone always be better, I would think?
It all depends on if they're using a cell phone, if they're using a landline. I would want to think that the cell phone's better, but there's been a lot of issues lately this whole week with cell phone reception.
Kevin is May 1st already booked.
Oh yeah, here people are calling today.
Oh yeah.
As soon as they heard it. Almost ready. Yeah, open it. I don't know who's your office, but
I want leadership team to know that Eric got even with me today because he sent me something that I had to work on at 5:45.
well, you're gonna be here. I mean, I don't want you to be empty to do something.
It's like a little snuggle. It's like.
I got the message. This is what happens when you're not in the room where I can supervise. That's interesting.
Oh, Omar has been a camera.
But that's 24/7. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You're so lonely. Over here. Have you seen this, man? There's a meme going around all these stuntmen here at the end, and they did the thing where they pretend like they're struck, like they do a backflip over and somebody up and throw a punch or throw something. They're hilarious. I don't have to see their funny stuff because there's a couple where a guy grabs like a roll of toilet paper and he catches it, and then there's one where like the guy's doing the backflip and his girlfriend comes out of the shower in a towel and he pretends to smack her and she like falls back into the shower.
I love the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with the dog who can't.
Yeah, that was it.
The two takes it right just in.
You better see this. He's got it up against the fireplace.
Yeah, oh my God. Oh, we got a dog. We got a dog. Yeah.
I mean, the flamethrower responds to that. Not nearly.
What's he gonna use on meth or something? You won't mess it up. Yeah.
Acid.
That's it.
Acid cigarette.
Yeah.
But you watch it to do it, and it's like, something's got to, this is quick Tarantino, and you get through the whole movie, it's like, man, something's got to happen.
Yeah.
And then it happens.
Everybody actually shown, like,
Oh, yeah.
charity.
Yeah.
Go to the wrong house and get killed.
Does Mike Reilly have his iPad again?
It's probably a set, established setting.
Yeah, I've muted everyone until I.
Is there a raise your hand function on this thing? Like if someone wants to speak, they can hit a button to.
No.
They wave.
No.
If they're,
I know, but I thought on one of the
video,
platforms, maybe it was the Google platform.
it's
that
in the
you can-
webinar.
You can.
Yeah, it's usually GoToMeeting. Is there something you wanted to
The Zoom
expect?
webinar,
Yeah.
The chat,
Was-
the meetings.
I mean, we could probably do it another way. What would be the concern?
No, just so that there's a bunch of discussion, like you can sort of manage the flow, so it should be fun at this moment.
Got it.
Hi, Marie.
Hello. If I can get my act together. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, but it's bad.
The same.
This is that or peanut butter rice cakes, and I wasn't feeling that.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I can see you.
Remember that, Shirley? Where is it? It times out. Get a lot of redundant processes. Yeah.
Got it.
We can pay extra for it, I think $100.
Oh, yeah, because the extra feature for the webinar. Got it.
Good to go, Bridget?
I am.
Everybody there is muted still?
All the commissioners are unmuted.
Except for King. I see him.
He will.
I muted my own. I muted myself.
Okay, let's call to order this regular meeting of the Naperville Park District Board of Commissioners. It is Thursday, April 23rd, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. Bridget, please take the roll.
President Janner,
Here.
Vice President King,
Here.
Commissioner Carlson. Commissioner Egan.
I think Carlson's having trouble getting on.
Yeah, Bobby's looking for the Zoom invite.
I think he needs the number.
Should be at
I'll see if I can forward it to him.
Oh, he got it.
Got it.
Commissioner Egan. Commissioner McBroom.
Here.
Commissioner Reilly.
Here.
Commissioner Todd.
Here.
Okay, matters from the public. Bridget, does anyone from the public sign up to speak or send anything in advance?
I have one communication from Michael Yackley sent April 15th, 2020 at 5:21 a.m. Subject, wow, snow today. Let's get the boys out today and mow. In your face, taxpayer.
Okay, can you read that into the record, please?
The non-essential overpaid patronage park district is added again. Let's start mowing the parks that don't need mowing because Jimmy needs a job for college. Jimmy mowed for a couple of hours at Prairie Park Fields and then realized the grass did not need cutting, so he headed back to the shop to goof off at around 1:30 p.m. Our district supervisor was at Prairie Park at about 2 o'clock p.m. yesterday. He said he was inspecting the park for what? How long was the grass? What color was the grass? How many birds were in the grass? What? He sat in his truck with the engine running and the windows open for about 20 minutes, I think, playing with his iPhone. I hope the park district does not try to glom onto any recovery money. The park district is not a small business in need of help. The park district should be looking to cut their budget and return money to the taxpayer now. No raises for staff, no new hires for the PR department. We don't need to have the government bail out the government. You can enter this into the next virtual board meeting, Mike Yackley. Keep your mowing equipment off the streets and in the shop. Oh my God, OMG, it's snowing this morning. What will Naperville residents do today? The park district is probably already out salting this morning. You should enlist Mayor Shirko to shovel. He doesn't have much to do for the time being. We've had other correspondence from Mr. Yackley as well.
Thank you. Any other, anyone else sign up to speak?
Yeah.
I don't see anyone on the screen raising hand either, so let's then move on to the consent agenda. Can you please read the please read the items on the consent agenda for consideration?
Item 3.1, approve April 9, 2020 regular meeting minutes. 3.2, approve March 2020 disbursements made through the Bank of America Purchasing Card Program. The amount of $197,882.60. 3.3, award the contract for the DuPage River Sports Complex for renovation project to Innovation Landscape, Inc. in the amount of $190,000.
Thank you. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, then we'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda items 3.1 through 3.3.
Second.
Any discussion? Bridget, please take the roll.
Vice President King,
Yes.
Commissioner Todd,
Yes.
Commissioner Carlson,
Yes.
Commissioner Egan, not on yet. Vice President King, I'm sorry, Commissioner McBroom,
Yes.
Commissioner Reilly,
Yes.
President Janner.
Yes. Now we'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as accepted.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner King, second by Commissioner Todd. This is a voice vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? That carries. Motion carries. We have no unfinished business, so then we'll move on to our discussion items. The first discussion item tonight is item 5.1, Nike Sports Complex Synthetic Turf Field Replacement Site Work Project.
Yes, as identified in the April 17th weekly packet memo, this project, there's a contract for the site work to be presented for board consideration at the meeting in May. You may recall the approval of the synthetic turf contract in January 9th of this year. And this is just the site work portion, which is about $55,000, a much smaller portion, but it's related to the earlier portion of contract work that the board approved on January 9th. So we just want to let you know that a contract for the smaller site work related to a larger project will be presented to the board for consideration at a meeting in May.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All right, then hearing none, let's move on to item 5.2, Springbrook Golf Course Dynamic Sign Installation Project.
So also identified in the April 17th weekly packet memo, this project was proposed to have a contract presented to the board in May as well. After further discussion with staff, we identified from our bid documents that contractors will hold their price or required to hold their price for a period of 90 days. With that being said, our intent is to revisit this project with the park board at the June workshop when we have much more information to share.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments?
We're basically deferring it to save money at this point, up until the point of where we have to make a decision whether to move forward or just can the project completely.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
What was that, Marie?
I think that makes a lot of sense. Defer till we know more, and we'll make a decision at a later date.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Item 5.3, Cloud Creek Greenway Shoreline Improvements Project.
This falls in the same category of the Springbrook Golf Course dynamic sign installation project. We will also be looking to defer this project and revisit it and have a discussion with the board plan for the June workshop. So just a heads up there as well.
Thank you. First, can you make a note of Commissioner Egan joining at 6:30, 8 p.m.? Any questions or comments on that item, that report? Thank you. All right, then we'll move on to 2020 budget and financial discussion. I believe all the commissioners received some information that Bridget had sent out earlier this week related to the board's request for information on the budget and different scenarios. My understanding is that material is still in draft format for our discussion today, which is why it's not in your board docs, but obviously everyone received it. Does anybody have any, I guess before we go to questions or comments, Sue, did you want to give any commentary or Ray before we see what the board has to say?
Yes. So thank you, President Janner. So 2 weeks ago, we were managing personnel and stewarding assets by canceling spring programming, moving the beach open to June 20th, but still preparing to deliver services, including golf, the beach, and summer programs, and the board was supportive. In light of the governor's announcement today, that seems to be a very wise decision. You requested more financial information with 3 different scenarios, and we provided those 3 financial models to you. We asked Sue to provide some further explanation of these models.
Thank you, Ray. I'm not going to go into, hopefully you've all had a chance to look at the spreadsheets in this format. It's a little hard to everything. But just as an overview, as we were looking at how to structure this, we did 3 very broad financial models. One is a worst case, meaning we don't open up any of our facilities, we don't have any programs. Next would be a best case, and that assumes as of June 1st, we would be able to start programming and the beach on June 20th. What that would look like, and then rec programs through the rest of the year with the same participant levels as we've had in the past. And the third model, which is a middle ground, still assumed a June 1st date for programming, and then the beach also opening June 20th, but half of the participation. So that's how we started looking at this. And let me just say, these are very broad models with moving targets of trying to estimate where we are going to be. These models were not meant to be a revised budget, which if we're looking at as things are changing, once we have more information as we're getting with golf, golf did go through and gave us some really nice detailed plans because they had expected to open and were planning for this over the past several weeks. We would be refining a budget moving forward as we get more direction on what we can do with programming. So these models, the purpose is to tell us, number 1, where we think we could be under these broad assumptions at the end of the year. Number 2, in with a fund balance roll forward, we're looking at cash flows, how our cash is going to go month to month. And lastly, where we think we're going to be at the end of a fiscal year. And by using fund balance, how that compares to where we're going to end and how it compares to what we budgeted in fund balance, and also what our minimum reserve levels are. And thirdly, then, where we think we're going to be dipping down in reserves for those models. So hopefully it's explanatory. When you read it, I can go through. I think my thought as we were looking at this is we started at the worst case scenario, which is our baseline, and now I know from there I can get more detail and I can put golf on there. In a worst case scenario, we'd be looking at possibly drawing down $3 million. Worst case, without going back and refining anything. And that assumes, along with all of our other models, that we would be keeping the expense cuts that we've already made in the budget, deferral of the capital items, and reviewing additional capital items as we've done tonight as those come forward. So the good news is, when we look at these from my perspective, these broad models, is we come into this crisis situation of so many unknowns with strong reserves. And that's what our reserves are for. We're not advocating a complete spend down of those, but when I see these models, I know we have the cash flow to get through a year. And very importantly, as we were looking at this and what we would be doing from an expense side and revenue, is that when we end this year, we want to be in a strong financial position again. There's really several reasons for that. Number one, we need cash flow. We need cash flow when we start the year just based on the way a park district is organized. Our two main revenue sources of program fees and property taxes. We use our fund balance at the end of one year to get us through the first 4 or 5 months of the following year. So for example, we want to end 2020 with strong reserves. So 2021, we can be prepared for cash flow until rec program revenues come in, and we're not sure what that's going to look like. And so that's our liquidity needs. Also, by keeping the minimums, we support our AAA bond rating. That's becoming more important as the state of Illinois is, going in further turmoil and possibly downgrading trouble therein as we go into the bond market for possibly refundings, which we're looking at right now with Eric, that we keep that rating as is. And it's going to also prepare us for uncertainties coming in. So I can tell you our approach as we've worked through this crisis, as you know, was an initial cutting of expenses and deferral and looking at the prioritization of our capital. These models give us a big picture of where we could be based on certain scenarios, and I imagine it's going to be somewhere in the middle where we could be drawing down. I don't know what that number is exactly, but we're looking at ranges of possibly knowing we can program golf is going to be how we're ready. Will we be drawing down $1 million, but still being able to keep that reserve by deferring some capital and moving some funds out of capital if we need to, or I should say.
I think that's important to point out. And my mantra to actually speaking with staff is we're operating right now as we have no reserves. So we're operating with no balance, no nothing. And so it's evident tonight, and you'll see more of this, we are deferring things. We're not just sitting back and going, well, we've got X amount of millions of dollars in reserves, therefore we have a cushion, we should be able to do project 2, 3, 7, 8. Everything is questioned. Again, you will see more of this. We will maybe bring, certainly some items to you that, for example, we just got a bid in on a project that's $50-some thousand under bid. $50-some thousand. We're back into the same climate, early on here as we were in 2009, 2010. But that being said, I want to stress to you, just because we've submitted documents, submitted scenarios, doesn't mean that we sit back and go, okay, we've given the commissioner the information they need. Let's just move forward and keep doing the job. And if we need this or we need that, we just go out and buy it. That's not the case at all.
That's correct. I can even tell you from when the message came out about a spending freeze, not only is Ray approving every expenditure over $1,000, we're getting this too. And they've been far and few between, and on the maintenance side of where we're seeing some dollars. And also where we're seeing dollars spent from now is mainly on the 3 large projects that we are in, Post Crossing, 95th Street, and the non-park renovation. So there's a wide range of outcomes based on a lot of large assumptions, but what it tells me is having the reserve policies that we have, it sets up us to endure this and be prepared to still provide what we can to the community through this difficult time.
Thank you. Take care of whatever, what's going on.
She's got to mute. Somebody's got to mute themselves over there. It's either Marie or Bill.
we're getting a lot of feedback from somewhere, so I'm not sure if it's coming from somebody that's on the screen or that's not our own camera. There we go. Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
So, just a reminder to the commissioners, our ask here was to kind of give us a framework for commissioner discussion on this topic. And certainly appreciate Sue getting all that together along with Ray and the rest of the team. So I'll open up the floor to any questions, comments, reactions to anything that was just stated or anything that was in the materials that Bridget had sent out earlier this week. Bill?
I've got several questions. How do you want to go about this? Do you want me just to take all of mine up all at once, or do you want to do it kind of by the models, or?
I guess I'll ask Sue, is it easier to address these things in certain chunks or certain categories that would make sense from a finance standpoint, or should we just?
If you want to maybe stick with model by model, we can go through if there's assumption questions.
Sure. So I've got some general questions, and then I've got a worst scenario, couple questions, and then a mild 2 and 3. So, Rich, you want me to just kind of do general questions first?
Why don't we start?
Other people?
Why don't we start with anything general, high level, and then we can follow that up with going into the specific models. I think that makes good sense.
Sure. So my first kind of general question, and you certainly stated an answer at the beginning, was why weren't these documents that we received posted in the agenda? I don't buy the pre-decisionable or draft comment. These documents were brought here for us to discuss in this meeting, in a public meeting. The public should have access to those. Looking across other agendas from other organizations, whether it be city council, whether it be school district, pick your organization, they are listing their stuff out there so that the public is aware of what's being discussed. The public is deprived of a chance to comment on these discussions. So with that said, I think we need a policy that all items on the agenda be supported by a written memo and analysis where appropriate going forward. So moving on.
I'm just going to ask Attorney Price to comment on that from a policy standpoint, so to speak.
You already have that policy's already on the books, Commissioner Egan. So the only thing I can tell you is, the world changed at 2:30 today in terms of the assumptions. The governor said you can have golf at May 1st. We again had to go back and look at everything we were doing here. So it's very fluid. I understand your frustration with it not being out there, but I will take a little offense to the idea that we're trying not to be transparent here. We've asked for analysis on the ground as the variables change by the hour. So I think a little patience is in order, but you already have the policy you want. If you think we haven't performed, that's your opinion and you're entitled to it, and we respond to that, but the policy exists.
Well, with that being said, Dirk, in the good old corporate world, where this should not be any different, you make decisions and things change on the fly. There's a reason why I cannot abbreviate the word assumption when I'm teaching kids about these sorts of things. So my standpoint is, and if we need to get 4 hands that say we need to have a decision on every document being posted, I'm okay with that. So my first kind of general question, maybe this is more towards worst case scenario, but why are we reducing revenue at the tax level when people pay their taxes, generally speaking? I know that we don't get 100%, but we cut the revenue down from 99 point something to approximately 97%. I don't have the number right in front of me. Taxes are sold when people don't pay their taxes. Why are we cutting revenues at this point?
I'll take that one. So DuPage County has indicated that while they will transmit whatever taxes are paid on time, they are not going to assess a late fee for not paying it. And so we took into account the fact that many rational actors will say, if the cost of money is zero to me, I'm not going to pay my property taxes until much later. So they're, in the usual sense, you're exactly right about them being sold and penalties and all the rest.
none of those mechanisms will exist for at least 3 months, according to DuPage County. So for 90 days, we'll be without those, without some of the tax money.
I appreciate that, Dirk, and I'll shine up my CPA, but that's a cash flow issue, not a revenue issue. So we're going to collect those taxes, and reducing revenue is simply an objective to make our position look worse than it really is.
Okay.
So in the memo, 240 part-time staff were all related to activities, right? So in your memo, 230, 240 staff members, all part-timers.
Bill, can I ask a question on that? If you're talking revenue and that aspect of it. So can you explain again the source of our revenue is basically from taxes and from programs, correct?
Those are the two main revenue sources, taxes and program fees.
Okay, and then Bill, educate me on your CPA about what your last statement was.
So basically, if you think about it in terms of payables, if you go out and you do work for a client or somebody, you order work in your line of work and you issue a purchase order, you're eventually going to get an invoice. You want to get paid in 30 days, 60 days, whatever. They don't pay you on time. Maybe there's a late fee, maybe there's not. That's not part of the issue here. But at some point, you will hopefully get paid. Not all the time in corporate, right? But in government, we have this wonderful asset called people's homes. If they don't pay their taxes, the taxes are sold and the government bodies get paid. In an instance where they are absolutely not paid, nobody buys those taxes, eventually the home will sell. The government will have a lien on the home, the back taxes have to be made up. So we might not get all the money this year, I'll concede that point, but you're going to get the revenue at some point in time. So I wouldn't expect that the revenue be cut on the income statement. I would expect to see the differential on the cash flow statement, which is the whole point for having reserves. So you got a timing difference. We thought we were going to get paid in May and June. We may not get paid until September and October. Okay, but the revenue will be made.
So so your revenue would be just delayed on that, and obviously it's a cash flow issue. Sue, are you just identifying this as a potential revenue, and you're taking a percentage of what the potential revenue is off then?
So yeah, between what Dirk had said, and it is a timing issue, and also we usually have a 1.5% allowance on the collectability of property tax. It's pretty standard. Our auditors support that. Based on just the uncertainty of where we are, I took a conservative approach for the model for this. This is not set in stone, where if we're taking a 1.5% allowance, I doubled that to get maybe a worst case scenario. It's not to make us look worse, but in my mind, when I'm looking at this, I would rather show a position to say, wow, this could be the worst, and hopefully it isn't. I mean, I hope we do get 99.8% of our property taxes on time as we're supposed to when it comes through on our normal schedule. For this exercise, I just took an extra conservative approach, and it's not 3%, I could model it at 1.5. The purpose for
I think your assumption is correct, and I'm not a CPA, but I would defer to people a lot smarter than I am, but I think you did a good job having that assumption in there for the property taxes reduction. Whether it's revenue or cash flow, how you look at it.
Well, Mike, there's a difference between the cash flow and the P&L, and that's my point. If you reduce your revenue and keep expenses the same, you're going to show a loss. When you're going to collect those revenues 3 months later, you have not presented a scenario, albeit an assumption. I'm with you. I'm saying it's a bad assumption. And that we're going to get those taxes. So therefore, worst case is really better than what we've been shown.
Okay.
You good?
Thank you. Yes.
All right. So the 240 in the memo that's highlighted, 230, 240 part-timers were laid off. All those part-timers were related to activities and events that weren't going to run because we couldn't run activities, correct? Soccer.
correct.
Soccer referees.
Not soccer referees, because we were going to contract out soccer referees. That does not include what would have been referees. But that includes many of those are program instructors,
A lot of them are staff who work within our facilities, whether it's part-time custodial staff, fitness attendants, personal trainers, but most are related to facility operations and programs.
So those activities, since they weren't running, they didn't make sense to keep them around. You made them, it was management 101. It was the cuts that were obvious and needed to be made no matter what if a program wasn't running.
Yes.
I think you guys have frozen that in my head. Oh,
Right.
Okay. So in worst case scenario, actually that's worst case scenario question. So I'll stop and we're going to go by general questions. I'll move that one down. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other general questions before we get into the specifics of any of the models or comments?
I have a question on the 4.1 reduction. Is that already in the $4.1 million reduction? Is that already in place?
Yes, it is built into all of these models, and that took effect the day we made those.
So we've reduced our budget by already $4.1 million for the rest of the year. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah, just a comment and what I've gathered, first of all, I think Sue and the Park District should be applauded for how healthy we are financially. Unlike the other municipalities in the state and the city that are just a mess. So, we're kind of a shining light. It seems to me that we are able to weather an unprecedented storm. And they are able to continue providing services and pay. When I look at the 4.1, which, so I was looking at the capital allowance adjustment, which is, I think that comes up to like 2.8. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
So I guess first question, then I'm going to make a comment. So what is the difference between the 4.1 and the 2.8?
So we also made reductions to the operating expense budget, so we delineated between those two.
Okay. So, in a time like this, I mean, I totally agree, like the sign at Springbrook, or, maybe there's a truck that we can push off to next year, things like that. But I look at, what is the purpose of reserves? And it's precisely for times like these, but what's in government, what is the real purpose of the reserves? Is it for when we have an economic downturn, can we continue to, do our capital projects, renovate a basketball court or a baseball diamond? Can we continue to do those things in an economic downturn, or are the reserves there to pay staff endlessly? Or maybe should it be both? So I know there's been talk about, I guess where I'm not real comfortable is our answer to lacking revenues is to stop improving our parks and looking at things that are non-essential. And from the staff side, the only people that feel any pain are kind of the lowest level of the part-time people. My understanding as a board, we don't have any authority over the pay. It's just, I think it should be a consideration, with 26 million people out of work. And the people who are at work are taking, huge hits. So I sympathize with what you guys are going through. I just wanted to say my part, what I've been feeling about this. And I do think that there should be some level of sacrifice on the salary side. That's it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Bobby, I see your mouth moving, but I think your microphone might be off.
Like Bobby's trying to restart something. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I dropped out somehow and I missed the last comment.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Yeah, go ahead, Bobby.
I agree with Josh. I think that the optics are important. And I think that we're going to catch a lot of crap for not doing that, not reducing the top executive pay. That's my feeling.
Just a point of clarification, Bobby, I think everybody understands that we don't have the authority the board doesn't have the authority to reduce the executive director's pay based on both the contract itself and the board policy at present.
Correct. I know that. Yep.
With one other comment or maybe a point of clarification too from this is when we cut 240 part-time staff members, does that add additional work to the existing current staff? And it seems like some staff, I know we looked at, Brad's, when he was a couple of years ago, he was doing, 5 jobs for one person. And I know we run very kind of lean with the staff as well too. And you guys are probably doing 2 or 3 jobs currently as this goes on. Can you tell me if that's still happening, or is that happening more so now than it has in the past?
Yes, in some instances, that has increased the workload on some of our staff. And an example would be, within recreation, we rely very heavily upon part-time staff to assist with not only the operations, the instructional programs, but also the program administration, development, as we're putting programs together for future guides, such as the summer guide that we're working on right now. We are preparing to begin doing the fall program guide right now. Normally, we have 22 part-time recreation coordinators that work with our full-time staff to do that. And the majority of those have either been furloughed or are working very minimal hours, maybe 1 to 2 hours a week, to help out where they can with the full-time program managers. So yes, that has become a situation where we have staff who are having to take on additional responsibilities right now.
Well, we're missing the low-hanging fruit, which is Ray's deferred hiring of replacement chief of the police division. Has taken that job on. It's not in his job description.
Hear you, Dirk.
What's that?
It's a little hard to hear you. I don't know if it's because you're leaning back or.
All right, I'll try. Thank you. I was trying to speak up. I just want to remind everybody, Ray's taken on the police chief job. It's not in his contract. He's not getting extra pay. There's no extra pension money for Mr. Yackley. He keeps saying that, which is not true. But that's another example where, $15,000 a month or so in cost is being preserved because Ray's doing another job under the same compensation. So
if I can get onto that. Sure. Since the topic of my salary has been brought up, I'd like to speak to that, and I was going to speak to the fact of what Dirk just said. And I know some of you as commissioners don't have the benefit of being here as long as other ones have, but on 3 occasions I voluntarily forfeited any pay raise or bonus. I did that on my own, wasn't asked to. Secondly, I took on this second full-time job. Didn't have to do that. Could have brought in a police chief that I have already selected, but I said not to, that I'm not going to do that for the betterment of the district. So I'm basically going to be running a police department and the executive director during COVID. I would ask any of you if you know any executive directors or any directors in Naperville, public service, that have volunteered to do that. And oh, by the way, then take on the fact when Edwards Hospital called and said, we are in deep trouble, we need to do a blood drive, can you help us? So I show up here on Saturdays because I want to and I want to help. So giving back to the community has always been a part of my mantra and will continue to be. And then last Saturday I was at Loaves and Fishes. So I honestly take offense, not to the question, but to the inference that just because I'm the executive director, that I should necessarily then go ahead and lob my pay if I was doing nothing, or if I was doing the bare minimum, I think I demonstrate opposite of that taking on 2 full-time jobs now and trying to maintain a life will be difficult, but I'm willing to do that. Thank you.
Right. God love you. I mean, when I think of leaders, you're at the top of the list. I appreciate your comments, but with that said, welcome to management. I run my own business, my people quit, or I don't have enough clientele to support hiring somebody else. I've got to go in there and do bookkeeping work. These are tough times. I appreciate Brad's comments about working on the summer book, but we're now extended 30 days. I don't know why we're even working on that. We're not going to have summer programs as best I can tell. And the fall book is questionable too. I get that you've got to be prepared, but there's a balance of saying it doesn't make sense to do this right now. And oh my God, the world changed at 2:30 and we may need to rally the troops. Everybody, whether you're in government or not, is going through the same things. And the #1 mantra is to protect capital. Google is laying off half of its marketing force. Google, billions and billions of dollars. They're laying off half their marketing department because times are changing. They may need to hire them back, surely. Nobody wants anybody to be out of work. But that's just kind of the times that we're in. We have to make hard choices.
And we have, and we will. I guess, and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. I think that the commissioners should go through the questions, but I'm going to have a series of questions, policy decisions I'd like you guys to make tonight to give me direction, because that will influence staffing levels, which came up, as you know, we discussed.
Brad, while we're on the topic of staffing levels, can I ask you to comment also? I mean, you talked about how people are taking out additional responsibilities. Certainly, if we don't open the beach at all and we're not administering all these programs, that's got to be, it seems to me, a little bit of a pullback in staff need, right? I mean, certainly not opening the beach and not managing that whole facility and just having that sit dormant, that can't possibly be as busy as it would be to manage it, for example.
It's changed. And right now, you would think that without running spring programs, that we would not be as busy as what we normally would be. Certainly, our facilities are not busy. You don't see people out in the parks, recreating as much like you would typically see with athletics. But just want to provide the board with, some information as to what staff is doing right now, because there is a lot that is going on. Processing customer refunds. We've had to process over 10,000 customer refunds, and we still have thousands of refunds that we're still processing for all of these spring programs, memberships at Fort Hill. Responding to customer emails through our info link. Since shutting down March 17th, we've had over 600 emails that have come through with within our info at napervilleparks.org. Just the coordination communication of program and event cancellations or postponements as new information becomes available. And new information becomes available almost daily. This includes all of our April and May activities, our large events that extend into June. That's not only for Park District activities. Our staff continues to work with outside community groups, including athletic groups, which we're contacted by consistently, looking at when we are able to get back onto the fields, when can they get scheduled and have their team or be able to do some type of activity with their organization. Rescheduling of events, activities. There's a number of large events within the community that have canceled. Many are postponed. They're trying to get those late summer or fall dates if they can. A comment was made about the summer program guide. One of the reasons we're working on the summer program guide, prior to the shutdown, the summer program guide was finished. We were ready to go. Our staff has gone back in and we're basically redeveloping the summer program guide based upon guidelines that we believe are going to come up. And we're restructuring programs such as day camps, looking at minimizing the size of day camps, spreading out locations, having multiple sites where those are at, working off of considerations like reducing our program sizes with our summer programs, as well as for our fall. Practicing good hygiene, staggering program start times so that we don't have people coming in and out of facilities or in and out of parks at the same time. Modifying our program activities to include, maybe we're not doing field trips, we're not placing kids on buses if we're able to do the day camps. Day camps are used quite often by many parents within this community as the childcare during the course of the summer. So as businesses are able to reopen, they're going to be looking for places for their children to go. We're preparing for that. Looking at considerations as far as developing guidelines and updating procedures around our facility operations. When our facilities reopen, we're gonna be under different guidelines than what we've ever had to operate under. So making sure we've got the right PPE in place. We've got additional signage. We're in the process of putting sneeze guards at service desk locations to be able to protect our staff. Registration for summer camps. We already have over 2,000 kids that are registered right now for our summer camp programs. About half of what we typically see during the course of the summer. May and early June is normally a very busy time as far as kids registering for camps. Garden plots are scheduled to open next Saturday. Information just went out to gardeners today on that. Deep cleaning all of our facilities, top to bottom. Hiring staff. We are anticipating being able to run some programs during the course of the summer. So hiring those staff, we're not training them yet. We've not brought them on to payroll. We've pushed that off, but at least getting those staff in place so that if we are able to provide the recreation services to the residents, we're ready to do that. And staff has been working to develop and introduce an entirely new program area for this district. We've not done virtual programming before. And if you've not had the opportunity, please go to Naperville Parks to You, the website, where we have 15 different categories, activity categories that have been set up within a matter of weeks, where we are offering multiple activities to residents and we're adding to that continually. Since rolling that out on March 31st, we've had over 17,000 visits to that site by our residents. We continue to do virtual programming with the addition of pay to participate virtual programs. We have fitness classes that are running right now that are pay to participate. We have 15 other contractors and instructors that staff is working with right now to develop the pay to participate types of classes that we can offer on the website. And then lastly, Fort Hill Fitness staff, they continue to keep our members engaged at that facility by providing the daily workouts at home. And we've also been doing that through approximately 20 live virtual group fitness classes on a weekly basis. That has been huge. Between March 26th and today, we've had 80 classes. We've had over 3,400 participants in those classes. Some of those classes are getting 95 participants within those classes. Now that's something that we're transitioning. We're gonna have a mix of pre-recorded classes, fitness classes for people to do. They're gonna have the option to either pay to continue to have that large virtual schedule, or they're going to pay for select classes where they have the live virtual experience. So there's a lot that's happening within recreation right now. It's just happening in a different way. And it is falling upon the full-time staff because we don't have the part-time coordinators that we typically do to help out with putting all of that together and making all those changes.
Any other questions or comments in the area of general comments?
I just want to commend the staff and Brad's staff for doing this, going into a virtual area, working with kind of the new norm or getting through this. I know it's very difficult for our staff where I work, and it's difficult for you guys because it is a new approach, and it is not something that you do overnight, and it's something that people don't see on a day-to-day basis. Like cutting the grass or fixing a field or doing that. It's basically revamping how we actually interact with our community. So you're doing a great job. So thank you.
Great.
I want to echo what Mike just said. I think, the focus, I think for our staff needs to be on how we're going to provide services to the community when we open up. I believe the community is going to be looking to us as things slowly open up, in terms of what are they now going to do with their children? What are they going to do themselves? How are they going to recreate? I'd also like to say that let's make note that we are not a business. We are a a portion of government serving the community. And as such, I'm not sure that, you know, this discussion of, you know, we should take a pay cut because, you know, everybody else in the world is, the city council, the city is not doing that. The school districts are not cutting. We need our leadership. We need our leadership team. We need our employees to be fully focused because they're going beyond what they normally do. That's it.
Any other comments?
President Janner?
Yes, Commissioner Reilly.
I guess, Ray, I'll direct this to you. I think one of the things that we're dealing with is we're dealing in a very fluid situation that none of us have lived through or worked through. So it's a very different situation. And we don't know from day to day what's the next directive that's going to come from Springfield, as we found out today. But going forward, you know, if we look at a true, you know, worst case scenario, if the governor were to say that there can be, you know, no outside recreation programs, you know, certainly can't open, you know, Centennial Beach. Ray, how would you address the staffing needs going forward? And that's a broad general question, but I'm looking to get some direction here.
There would be massive layoffs here. It would be immediate. I mean, it wouldn't be something to think about. We would have to look at, okay, how does the garbage get picked up? And depending on the time of the year, how does the snow get shoveled? But we would be down to the bare minimum. So I would have to make those tough decisions. I would work with staff here to go through the different areas, which we do consistently here. But that would be without saying. That obviously would be just a mass layoff of all employees.
I'm going to have to intervene a little bit. But while there be layoffs, I have to remind everybody, we have some obligations with some of our assets that are legal in nature, where whether there's one patron recreating at all, doesn't matter. Kevin's people have to take care of certain of our assets to meet certain minimum regulatory requirements, because we're on rivers, we manage stormwater maintenance facilities for people, we've got dams in the system, all of these are part of our regulatory. So the idea that we could cut to 0 people, not going out, you know, like Mike Yackley's favorite people, the parks people out there, yeah, they got stuff to do because you have legal obligations. I'm not even going to get into it. That's your decision about what you do with your assets, whether you maintain them or you waste them. That's a policy decision for the board. But as a legal matter, you're going to be spending money on people going out to do this stuff. And lastly, as a legal matter, there's no such thing as a free lunch. You can terminate all those people, but that's not inexpensive. They're full-time employees, so you're going to pay out all their benefits, and then you're going to put them on unemployment. And you get no tax benefit, unlike businesses in the private sector where they get a payroll tax benefit for unemployment. You get none. All the legislation is very clear. State and local government will receive no benefit from the federal government on any of the obligations. So it's even more expensive for you to lay people off at full-time level than it is for the private sector. So there is a difference there.
Hey, Dirk, doesn't the CARES Act for layoffs under COVID, that's not applying to unemployment rates, is that not correct?
No, that's not correct. The CARES Act, when it talks about unemployment and what the benefits are, they do not apply to local government. And all the guidance has made that particularly clear. Over in bold from the Department of Labor came the thing, it does not apply to state and local government, we get no benefits. They put it in bold print.
Send that to me, would you please?
Will do.
And you led me to a question I was going to ask later, but I believe we as commissioners need a list of the essential personnel out of the remaining employees. To your point, Dirk, I agree with you 100%. There's certain things that we need to take care of legally, and we need I refer to them as cut the grass staff. Somebody's got to do that. We may not need to stick with the original manner of how we have planned to cut the grass, but those things, those maintenance things are a requirement and we need to do that. Maybe not to a current standard, but I'd like to see a list of those employees.
Any other comments? All right, should we move then to the worst case scenario model that you said it was the best place to start, Sue?
I think we go model by model, or
Any questions or comments on that worst case scenario model? We'll get into the weeds here a little bit.
President Janner?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike, then Bill, you after Mike.
Yeah, yeah. So if you could take us through the models and point out the areas of concern that you would have in the differences in the models.
Sure. Okay, so our first model, and that's our worst case scenario, as Commissioner Egan had mentioned. So the concern was on my part was the property tax. So in all of our models, what is the same as a 97% collection rate? So having said that, if we are at our typical collection rate, we would see another $600,000 in revenues, which would only help offset any kind of drawdown at the end of the year in fund balance or where we're having to reallocate capital. So that would definitely be a good thing. So in this model itself, we're assuming no fees from any of our programs. Things that do continue are reimbursements from Naperville Park for our capital. Looking through here, we do have full-time wages and a small amount for part-time wages in this model. And the part-time wages here do not include the folks that we have on the rec area. Part-time wages are mainly for maintenance for parks and also to maintain the golf course in a manner that you can play on it and that it will come back next year even if we didn't play on it in a good position. So when we come down to that, with all these broad assumptions where we are, we could potentially be at a $3 million drawdown. And in this model, where we would assume is if that were the case, and again, I'm going to put a caveat in there with all of these models, these are broad-based estimates that, you know, come tomorrow. Actually, the models are already out of date because we know golf can open up on May 1st. We're going to be revamping and maybe trying to hone in on one model in a lot more detail and a lot more on a budgetary basis versus broad assumptions of where we think we're going to be. So in this case, worst case, could we draw down $3 million? Do we have $3 million? And we do. We have $3 million to draw, and we could reallocate if we wanted. And there's definitely different scenarios. We'd be communicating with you on how we would do that. But the general fund, where we have most of our reserves, would be reallocated to the funds that would need the money that would either draw down negative or not. And in the end, on all of our models, and even on this one, we would be reallocating fund balances so we would meet minimum reserve requirements. And I think a question was earlier about our reserves. Because of the way park districts are structured, there's always a timing lag when we get property tax. So part of our reserves is, yes, to get us through bad times. The other main part is for cash flow. So we want to end the year in a good position. So that's our worst case. So that tells me worst case, and there'd be a lot of work on all these models to actually try and come down to a more of a budget versus a big model as we've done here. When we come to the second case, and I kind of take this with a grain of salt, we did a best case scenario. Is this realistic? No. But to get magnitudes, we wanted to see where we'd be. And if, you know, in a miracle world, if we just were putting things off and actually everything got up and running in June with the same property tax reduction, but we could run all our programs, we could end up a year in a really good position because of that 4.1 million we're going to cut out already. So on the second model, it could assume we would actually end up in a surplus. Does that even seem realistic in the condition we're in? Not really, but it was for magnitudes on the best end. And then on the third model, really, as I had mentioned before, tried to take a broad approach of how in the world can we project what we're going to be able to do on a recreation side for programs where we are right now. So we took the approach of, let's look at our past history and assume we have half participation levels. We still have to have the same, there'll be some reduction in expenses with that, but there's also going to be the fixed costs and the cost for programs that we're going to have to put on in different ways in smaller groups. So on that broad-based estimate, we're assuming under that case scenario, we could potentially still have a drawdown of 1.1 million for that year, and still though end up on a middle ground where we're going to, all of us, committed to making sure we end the year in a good position. So that's just really a broad overview. Not getting into a detailed budget, you know, I can't give you information on what department did what. We did broad estimates of what we know our fixed monthly costs were to determine the disbursements. And then for all of the programs where we are doing something, which would be the best case model and the middle case, we have the history of knowing that we have net income for our programs. So we basically took half of the net income from our past history and assumed that's what we'll be gaining in those models. And I know this is something I didn't mention before, and we can get into any more detail, is that as we've been talking about our short term and what we're doing here, we already have our eye on the future, and I think that is the key. You know, we're going to be changing what we're doing in increments with an eye always towards a longer term planning and what it's going to mean for us in 2021. And we all understand that it's not going to be business as usual. We're starting our 2021 budget talks as we're talking about what's going on right now and how we need to get to the end of the year. So I envision we'll be seeing information sooner, but it's going to be much more uncertain than we've been able to give you projections than in the past. But the key is long term too. So having 6 months reserves in our general fund and 3 months for rec and golf line in actually perfect in sync with our property tax distributions and where we need to get to, at least in a typical year. So I hope that that's enough detail, at least for the overview.
Thank you. Any questions on those models or anything that was laid out?
No, I'm good.
Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you. So on the reserves, the 6 months worth of levy, that's assuming no other revenue coming in.
Yeah, in the
worst case scenario, we're in Armageddon now. Anybody disagree with that? You're burning $3 million. So you've got effectively $3 million or 3 years at a minimum of reserves.
You know what, and that all depends.
There's no depending, it's $10 million, I agree. You're burning 3 million this year, we can round out. 3 into 10 goes 3 point something times.
Right, but it's not as simple as, at least under the rules we operate on, and that's why we wanted to do it by fund. It's not just how many reserves you have and where you can use those funds. Between FICA, IMRF, insurance, special recreation, and I will say even the recreation fund, we can't just move money around. It's got to be a per fund basis. So between having extra to use for emergencies and also drawing down on about 4.6 million in cash flow at the beginning of the year, that's typical for us. A drawing down reserve on a typical year from January 1st through May or June, we're drawing down 4.6 million in cash.
Right, so you got 4.6 million is less than 10. And you can move money from the general fund to any other fund, correct?
Correct.
So we can solve that issue by making 100% of our levy from the general fund?
We do it, that IMRF, you can't, that needs its own line item. A lot of that is.
IMRF's nominal in the grand scheme of our budget.
Right, no, but you could, I mean, you can move things around, but we also have tax cap rates per levy line item that we need to be cognizant of also.
Right, because
Especially-
you don't want the tax cap rate to fall back, so you can't levy. I appreciate that, and we certainly wouldn't want that. But the point still stands. Yeah, it's taking a planned approach is all that takes. So from my standpoint, we are severely over reserved. I think we're over reserved by at least $5 million, and especially in these days, the Commissioner McGroom's point, we should be providing something to the taxpayers and not cutting out their capital. My opinion, where four hands go, four hands go. I have a question on why you grouped the wages, well, not just specifically the wages, you grouped things January through April, and then you went to a monthly view. That gives the appearance of a steep cut or drop off instead of letting us see the trend.
Oh, okay, well, the January through April was just our way of capturing that data in a quick format versus going back and recreating what was done. There's no intent other than for us it simplified the model to go through and put in one column where we are today, what was known.
All right. I appreciate that. Throughout my career, I've never seen anybody in the financial model group it that way. So if you wanted to do quarters, everything should have been presented in quarters, in my opinion. But it's not my work. The average salary in the worst case scenario, January through April, just by taking the 4 months and what the number you had there was 169,000. In May, it's 275 and then drops to 183. What's going on there?
Okay, I'm sorry, can you point to where you're looking, Bill?
I took the average, in worst case scenario, top line. I took the total salary that you gave there and simply divided by 4 for the 4 months. I came up with a monthly average of 169,000.
May had 3 payrolls.
Yeah.
And then you drop down to you go to 275 and then you drop back to 183. So I'm trying to understand the average.
Oh, May and October. May and October have 3 payrolls.
Also, January, since it was an accrued payroll, only had 1.5 payrolls, not a full 2.
Say that again?
January is only 1.5 payrolls, not a full 2 because of the accrued payroll. The first payroll in January went back to December.
Uh-huh.
And then, so there's only 1 and a couple days worth in January.
So are we presented cash basis or GAAP basis?
The only time we do accruals in December. For payroll, at least. Accounts payables every month, but payroll's only done in December.
So some of May's increase at 275 should have been accrued in previous months.
Yes, April. There's a payroll on May 1.
So then, well, it's not a large difference, but the average for the rest of the year goes to 183. So if I ignore May, if I buy what you're telling me, I've got a $14,000 increase per month, and your accrual in January should be wiped out in the averages. If you have to come back to me, I'm okay with that.
I was going to say, Commissioner Reagan, is it okay if you have a question about that, we can give you more detail?
Yep. In the rec fund, why do part-time wages remain and why the spike in October? Why do full-time wages increase in October to 170? Is this another payroll issue?
Okay, you're in the rec fund.
Yeah, I dropped. I'm still worst case scenario. Now I'm in the rec fund.
October's another 3 payroll month.
Okay, so why do we have part-time wages though? If we laid off all of our part-timers?
We have not, there are still some part-time folks on payroll, and it is primarily park staff and golf staff on the maintenance side.
Okay. Golf, Why do we have part-time wages?
Called maintenance.
We got part-time maintenance folks over there still?
Bill, are you questioning the validity of the numbers? I mean, come on. I think we got to make some assumptions that Sue knows what she's doing and that the numbers are correct.
Well, I don't know, but every time I've made a presentation in a room full of financial people, before you start speaking, you give them 3, 4, 5 minutes to look at the slides to make sure that they cross-check. It's in the very nature of a financial person. You got to make sure that everything's lining up. I can't start thinking about these things until I'm sure what's going on with the trends. If you can't, okay, I can't.
But you've had this for several days, and you certainly had the ability to pick up a phone and call Sue and ask her about these. You know, I don't know. I accept the numbers that they present. I assume that what she's presenting is correct. Am I the only one that?
Marie, I'm running a business. I'm dealing with businesses trying to get PPP loans and a family that's e-learning and all these other things.
I understand.
President Janner.
I have to deal with. I appreciate your situation. It's a bit different.
Yeah.
President Janner.
Yeah, Commissioner Reilly, go ahead.
I agree with Marie. I think we're wasting time challenging the numbers. I say we accept the numbers as delivered by staff and move on with questions that have importance.
I'm a commissioner. I have the floor. I have the right to ask any question I want. Do I not, Dirk?
You do within limits. You've got the other colored policies that say that, you know, we have to show respect to everybody. So within those rules as administered by the board president, yes, you have a right to ask questions.
So I think from a fiduciary responsibility, you all should be interested in my questions as much as I'm interested in your questions because you bring different backgrounds.
Bill, how much more do you have here?
In the spirit of trying to move on here, we've got salaries in golf at 36,000 and the benefits are 21,000 a month. Are those, you double check those? I didn't think benefits were that high is the point of my question. That's 70%.
Benefits,
Right.
their wages will not
Yeah.
appear in the full
Because it looks like
plan.
you dropped off on audio. I think so. I'm not sure because he was connected via his iPad. So I just texted him and answered Bill's question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so when we're looking at the part-time and the part of our part-time staff are 30 plus and they are health insurance eligible and take advantage of that.
The cash flow shows revenue in all months, but the rec fund above only shows revenue in January through April. What am I missing?
So again, we took year-to-date, January through April, just for this model, and then rolled forward estimates going forward.
And then I guess I've got one final overall question before I have some recommendations or other comments after everybody else goes. You didn't maintain the same format and put a cash flow after each model. I'm curious as to why you didn't keep that consistency.
Yep, so when we looked at this and when we were putting this information together, we talked a lot about cash flow versus fund balance. And just to pull all this together and get it for you, cash flow was very similar to fund balance. And when we look at things and what the way the board has seen information before from us on a budgetary basis, we stuck with the fund balance model and just ran a cash flow like this. And to keep it simple and clear, we stuck with the fund balance for everything else, which mirrored cash very closely versus having two schedules for everything.
But the request was for cash flow on each scenario, right?
We were considering.
I'll buy you what you're selling on the fund balance, but you know the cash flow is more telling to me.
It's very similar. Commissioner, again, for us. The drawdowns and fund balance are very similar to what the cash position is.
Okay, any other commissioner have any questions or comments on these models? Ray, you had mentioned that you would like some board direction on policy, or can you outline the questions that you need us to answer so that we can try to reach consensus on those items?
Yes, thank you, President Janner. So after a conference call with President Janner on Monday, it became apparent to me, and it's obviously apparent here with some of the commissioners, that there was questions and concerns about staffing levels, current staffing levels at the Park District. And so I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to speak with me individually. But as I spoke with each one of you, there were some common themes that came out of that I would like staff to address, particularly 4 areas: golf, parks, communications, marketing communications, and recreation, which Brad's probably pretty much covered already. But I'll start with Kevin about some of the questions and the feedback that I got from you, questioning why we have X amount of people still working and why more people are not laid off.
Thank you, Ray. Well, golf has been adjusting and adapting to this shutdown currently. We've been reducing our costs, our staffing, and with the main goal being ready if and when the order was lifted. But the priority has been to maintain our asset, the golf course, but of course at a much lower level than normal. This has allowed us to be able to ramp back up in a short period of time to have the golf course ready for our customers when or if the order was lifted. And we've had the news lately that earlier today that the governor has lifted the order and allowed golf courses to reopen. In the meantime, greens, tees, and fairways were a priority. Rough bunkers, beds, other landscaping were all reduced or deferred. Mowing frequency in some areas were reduced 50% or more. Additional maintenance staff were not brought on in as scheduled in April, and other expenses were cut to minimal needs only. And even though the majority of the clubhouse staff was furloughed in April, the business of golf has been continuing. Current staff is limited to 2 full-time employees and 1 reduced part-time employee. They've been instrumental in compiling our new budget forecasts as we've been able to adjust to the revenue changes that we expect to see. Personnel adjustments are being made as some furloughed employees might not be coming back. The work with leagues, tournaments, and programs continues. Rescheduling, cancellations, and refunds are all part of the daily process. Staff is currently working on moving programs in Naperville in the fall, which is now available since the decision was made to defer the driving range project. Our customers are expecting us to be back on the course at some point. We are still processing payment for permanent tee times, refunds for the first 2 weeks that were missed. Memberships are still being purchased. Brooks Advantage cards are being sold online. And also online merchandise purchases are still being made for our golf shop to go. Staff has been keeping the golf course ready for our customers so that they can at some point enjoy recreation. But at the same time, we are reducing our monthly expenses. As Sue had mentioned earlier, our planning includes reduced expenses for all of 2020. As we continue to navigate these changes, those will change too.
Kevin, in my neighborhood, I noticed there's a ton of people walking around because that's, in the evening, everybody's walking around taking walks because that's kind of acceptable. Mm-hmm. I tend to think that when golf becomes open May 1st or whatever and it's acceptable, I can see a huge run of everybody wanting to get out there again. Is that what you and your team are projecting? Even an increase in the demand in a big way, or not so much? Or
we're expecting the demand to be there. We're looking at it as a reduction in some areas of our revenues, depending on what restrictions are in place.
Right.
We don't know those yet. We're going to find out hopefully here really soon from the governor's office. But we will see a big push in demand right off the bat. We got that word come through today at 2:30, and we already have the phone ringing, people looking for tee times.
Right. What do you foresee some of the changes? It's obviously a vast space, so staying 6 feet away from your partner seems fine. Well, what do you foresee as some of the major changes coming down? Like in my industry, I have a really good handle on what's coming forward. What are you seeing in your industry?
Some of the other neighboring states have been open for a while, and we're kind of expecting the state to follow some of those restrictions that they have in place. For example, tee time intervals will be extended out. So you'll have fewer people on the golf course at any given time. We'll expect that all purchases will either have to be made online or via phone. There will be no in-person purchases. The clubhouses will probably remain closed. At least off the start, we probably won't have food service available, possibly golf carts, or if golf carts can go, they'll be single rider only. So we'll know more, obviously, once the governor releases some of his restrictions or stipulations, but at this point, we're going to be prepared for all.
Thank you. So are you looking for any specific guidance on this area?
No, unless there's a question from any of the commissioners, anything that was just said by Kevin.
Any other questions for Kevin on golf?
President Janer?
Go ahead, Commissioner Reilly.
Kevin, a question. I would anticipate, obviously we don't know what the restrictions are going to be, but it would seem that disinfecting, for example, of carts in between rounds, etc., would very likely be part of the restrictions. Have you started to price out what that would cost?
We've been working with staff to come up with a whole slew of different ideas and plans for sterilizing the building, disinfecting golf carts, disinfecting the property altogether. So there will be some added cost to that. We don't have the exact number right now, but we are working on it.
Thank you.
I'm good.
Anything else for Kevin?
Thank you, Ray. Ray had asked that I just give a big overview of what the maintenance department does. A lot of people think that since there's no programming going on in the spring, that we have that the demand for our work is greatly reduced. That is in fact not the case. It goes well beyond mowing the just under 1,200 acres that we do per week, or picking up the garbage every week. As an example, I have here 43 pages of work orders that will be coming active in May, strictly for the maintenance and inspections of buildings, the subsystems in buildings, the HVAC systems, fire and safety, and then as well as going outside of the buildings to inspecting our ponds, all of our trails, our dams that we're required to by IDNR, the lightning protection systems in the parks, all of our gravel lots, a couple of canoe launches that we have. Then when we move into June, we'll have bridges and other types of infrastructure work. So I just wanted to make it clear to the board that it goes beyond that. The playgrounds are inspected twice a month, and with May coming, we have a sustainable parks initiative, which takes a significant amount of labor to keep those in good operating order, especially in the mulch areas, because as everyone knows, things are changing by the week, and it's not something that we can ignore for a couple of months and then expect to get back on speed right away.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Kevin on parks? Okay, then we'll move on to marketing communication. Sam?
Okay, thank you, President Janner. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So I know there have been some questions as far as what marketing has been working on, and we actually continue to manage a high volume workload through the COVID-19 crisis. And it's just as important now to communicate as it is in what I'll call normal times. And I think I want to make an important distinction too. We perform two interrelated functions. Sure, we're marketing and promotions, but we're also communications. That's PR, media relations, community relations. You know, obviously that's been a really important part of what we've been doing since this whole COVID thing surfaced. So from an internal communication standpoint, we function as a support department. And a lot of what Brad was talking about earlier, Kevin Carlson was talking about golf, Kevin Finnegan, we work very closely with all the departments. We pretty much touch every area. So anything that those departments are working on, we're helping support their goals, whether it's signage, it's, you know, marketing a new opportunity like Brad was talking about, the virtual programs, you know, working with Kevin and golf and continuing to push out the online store, the new golf shop to go, anything that we've put together collectively as a staff, we're helping, we're supporting that through our communications efforts. So I know Brad talked a little bit earlier about the Naperville Parks to You initiative. We've had some great participation on that. I also want to remind the board that with the esports initiative, something that was turned around very, very quickly, you know, granted a free opportunity, something brand new that we're offering to the community. We had over 6,000 hits to that web page in about a week's time. So we're definitely pumping out the message. I think those numbers really demonstrate the direct results of our communications efforts. My department has also been moving forward marketing programs and facilities like Centennial Beach and summer camps, with the assumption that we're going to have some level of programming and operations in the coming months, although, you know, with things changing so quickly, we don't know exactly what that looks like at this point. Continuing to plan and continuing to work on things like the summer program guide and to shift and reprioritize things. It's necessary because we need to continue to plan for, you know, and continue to create and propagate the programs and let people know what's going to be available, obviously with a lot of flexibility. Again, as Brad mentioned, with the summer season in flux, we're working closely with the recreation staff on the summer program guide. The good news is, as you know, we're not publishing a hard copy guide. It's going to be digital, so we've got some flexibility there, which is great. From a messaging standpoint, there have been a lot of communication shifts throughout the past 7 weeks. First at our facilities, letting people know what we were doing to clean and maintain the health of our facilities, and also asking patrons to do what they could to help, you know, keep themselves healthy and everybody else. We've really shifted that, obviously making patrons and residents aware that, you know, if our facilities are closed, issues with the parks, kind of what we've done to try to minimize contact out in the community. So that's all been a part of the communication effort that my staff and I have been very involved in over the last several weeks. It's the COVID-19 page, which we're regularly updating. Again, the Naperville Parks to You, that's a daily occurrence where we're either curating content or rec staff is developing unique content and we're pumping it out there. We're putting it on the website. We're letting the patrons know what's available and refreshing that, because we want them, even if it's a free program opportunity like things on Naperville Parks to You are, we want people to stay engaged with us because that's our mission. That's what we need to do. So we're putting that information out there as well. We're continuing to write press releases and blogs and produce content on Park Talk podcast because we have stories to tell. You know, even though some things have been postponed, we don't exactly know when the 95th Street Plaza is going to open, things like that, but we have other stories to tell, other things that we're doing from an environmental perspective. And I mean, let's face it, people have time and the inclination to listen to that kind of content, to read a blog. So I look at that as a golden opportunity for us to really speak to our audience and continue to educate them about what the Naperville Park District is about and all the great things that we're doing as an organization. From a sponsorship perspective, and you might think, well, you know, what do we have to do with sponsorship? We have plenty to do with that. We're working with our advertisers and sponsors to help fulfill contracts as events are canceled and then also as they are rescheduled. It's unfortunate because the first quarter of 2020 was really strong for sponsorships. And actually, we started off the first half of March very, very strong. So we're working, you know, very closely with our sponsors to keep them on board, to provide them with other opportunities, alternative opportunities, if, for example, an event is canceled. So we're finding other ways to continue our partnership with them and to provide exposure for them. So this is a very high-level overview and accounting of what we've been doing as a marketing and communications department through the current period. There are a lot of other initiatives that we're attending to, but those are some of the highlights that I wanted to provide the board this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Any questions or comments on that? On rec, Brad, you've already given us a detailed report. Is there anything you wanted to add?
One sec.
I'm sorry, Bob.
Sam, thank you so much. I do, you know, I appreciate that, and I do think it's a great opportunity, especially from a marketing standpoint, to get through to people that are devouring online content. And you guys have done a great job. And, you know, I think I speak for everyone when I say that we don't ever question the effort that you guys put in. And I think, you know, we have a top level directors and Ray. So, you know, we never question that. I don't anyway. I think, you know, speaking for myself, I think, you know, the relationships between you guys and leadership from the top is great. And that's not a question I've ever had. So that's moving forward, whatever happens, I wanted to get that out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby. Brad, anything else you want to add from a rec standpoint?
Just one quick thing. I mean, I went through a number of things earlier, but you know, one thing, when you look at recreation programs and activities, and typically what you see out in the parks or in facilities, just something to remember is that that's the end result of a lot of work that goes in months ahead of time. So we're typically working several months ahead of time to put those programs together, to get things scheduled, work out schedules, begin working on the staffing plan, work with contractors. So, you know, in addition to all that we're doing right now to try to make quick changes and to push out to the community new opportunities, our staff is still focused on, we're working months ahead and looking towards summer and the fall to be able to put those activities together. Although, you know, they may look different than what we've seen in the past. It's still quite a bit of work that goes in at this time.
Thank you, President Janner. So this brings me to three big policy questions before us. With the benefit of the three models, there are some policy decisions to be made, whether you want to stay the course on being prepared for golf, the beach, and summer programming are going a different direction. Let me emphasize again that we don't have people hired right now who are doing nothing. We have plans for bringing staff on board as the circumstances allow for golf, the beach, and summer programming, but no one is being paid to simply wait at home for that call. In the governor's press release today, it states golf will be permitted with regulations starting May 1. We've been actively maintaining the courses to be prepared to open and have continued to market and communicate memberships and incentives. In fact, we sold a membership today. The governor's new order will allow golf. If you choose to close the courses in order to cut personnel, then the level of maintenance service would change. It would not be gone, but it would certainly be different. And our communications and overall staffing would change. But if you choose to stay the course, then we will be prepared to move forward as we have been planning, and our patrons will be able to enjoy the golf courses on May 1. So my question to you is, do I have direction to move forward with opening the golf courses?
Just to make sure everyone heard Ray's question, does he have direction to move forward opening the golf courses? You know, from my standpoint, I say absolutely yes, full speed ahead. I'd be a little bit surprised if anybody was in a different camp, but anybody want to agree with that statement or disagree with it?
President Janner?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I think, as I've said before, I think there's a lot of pent-up demand for golf, and I think it's going to be a challenge for Kevin and his team, but I think we're going to see a very, very strong demand for golf. So I would certainly support that.
Thank you. Commissioner Todd?
Yeah, I agree with what Mike just said. I think there is going to be a lot of demand for golf. The driving ranges, people are going to want to get out there. The weather is finally getting to be nice. So I think we should move forward with it, follow the requirements that the governor puts out, and let's get our programs rolling. And I'm sure we should also be working on how we restructure any leagues that we have, if that's needed. That we have our youth leagues, we've got camps, we've got instructions. You know, we need to be focusing on how to do all of those things so that we can move forward, because people are going to want, I think, to get out and do something.
Thank you. Bill?
No, I agree with that. We need to move full forward with golf. The underlying issue that I have is we were shut down weeks ago. We should have been furloughing then. We've got a full week that we could have been reacting to be pulling golf staff back. And that'll, that'll go to some other comments I have when we finish with Ray's questions. But with that said, at this point, move forward.
I mean, I hear at least 4 commissioners that are in favor of this, so it looks like it's moving forward. Bobby, is there anything that you wanted to add?
No, just to Bill's comment, golf courses don't get ready in a day, and they need to be maintained, and it's not just like flipping a switch. So that's all I want to say.
Okay, so it looks like we have a clear consensus on the first question of golf. What's the second question?
Aquatic facilities were not addressed today. IDPH and IAPD have statewide conference call on April 30th to address pools and splash pads, which we'll be a part of. It costs us nothing to wait until April 30th. We have maintenance, staffing, and communication plans for opening the beach on June 20th. But we also have maintenance, communication, and other plans for not opening at all. Either way, there must be maintenance of this asset, and there must be some communication to the public. So the question is, do you want to make the decision now to close, or do you want us to stay the course, be prepared, and wait for additional information?
Everyone hear the question okay?
He broke up a bit on my end, at least.
Yeah, could you repeat that?
Just the last part is what you need?
Yes, please.
All right, so my question is, do you want to make the decision now to close the beach for the year, or do you want us to stay the course, be prepared, and wait for additional information from this meeting next Friday?
President Janer?
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Well, I think that we're going to get more clarity on this within a week. So I think it certainly makes sense at this point to give it a week. That being said, I think there are going to be significant challenges to opening Centennial Beach. I think with social distancing and disinfecting of equipment, I think it's going to be very challenging. But it's very possible also that decision may be made for us by the governor. I could see a scenario in which the governor says next week, community pools and cannot be open for the rest of the year. But I would suggest that we wait till next week. And then given the direction that Ray gets tonight, I think you would move forward with a plan.
I agree. I think move forward and wait until it's a state decision or whatever. I believe that will come down. I don't think we'll have to make that decision necessarily.
President Peter, I'm sorry.
So yeah, I keep going until someone says stop, I think.
So just to clarify what's already been said, Mike, are you suggesting we make the decision on a particular date? I mean, Bobby is sort of on that page, but is saying, maybe it's a little bit indefinite. I mean, do we establish a date where on this date, May 1st, we're either going to put the gas pedal down or pull the plug? Is that what you were saying?
No, what I'm saying is we will, it seems very safe that we will have greater clarity on this issue a week from now. And after we go around the room and people, the other commissioners make their point, whether they support, going forward with the beach at all this year or closing it down now, that will provide Ray with direction. And then once greater clarity is achieved next Friday, then I would anticipate that Ray will put together a plan to follow those new guidelines.
Yeah, to your point, Commissioner Reilly, just because if the state says it's okay to open doesn't mean we are. I mean, if it makes complete financial disaster for us to open for, let's say that they say you can go open, but you only have 40 people or 50 people in the beach at any one time, it's financial insanity to go ahead and do that. So we would have to come back to you with a plan to say, okay, here are the scenarios. This is based on what the state is saying before we would certainly move forward.
Right, and that's the type of analysis and direction we would expect from you.
President Tanner?
King, I think I saw you next, then Bill, then Marie.
Me?
Hi, Mike. Mike King.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I would say stay the course. Basically, what you're going to do is exactly what Ray just said. Is as we go through there and can do the analysis of opening it up or not opening it up, you're going to find out if it's going to be viable to open it up, it's going to be cost effective to open it up, and then the proper time. So I say stay the course and keep this as an opportunity to open up to the public.
Thank you, Bill.
No, I agree with that 100%. My point would be that we shouldn't be spending any money on the beach at this point until we know. We find out on April 30th, based on what I've heard today, my expectation, even if you found out on April 30th, you could open up June 1st. You've got time to make up and do what you need to do. But my concern is the lifeguards. If I'm a college student and I don't know whether the beach is open or not, I'm going to be looking for jobs elsewhere. So I don't see, based on what I know today, the beach opening. But hey, my mind changes as the facts change. But I do not see the need to be spending any money at the beach until we have a definite decision one way or the other.
Just a point of clarification before we go to Marie. I'm hearing that we definitely have some maintenance work that absolutely needs to happen just for the stewardship of that asset. So, and that's what Ray is saying is, and Kevin is thinking his head, yes, all that's happening right now is maintenance, just so we can continue to be a good steward of that asset. I don't think a heck of a lot else is happening over there.
No, if we were to not open, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, after we cleaned it, which we have to, we would fill this up partly with well water.
Half and half, and then we would treat with an algaecide so that it wouldn't.
I can't hear.
We would mix. Okay. If the beach is not going to be open, we would fill the deep end with a mixture of our well and potable water, and then we will let nature do its course, both from the infiltration from the river, which happens on a periodic basis, a continuous basis, and rainfall, and then we would treat it with an algaecide so that it won't green over.
Question. If we don't open the beach, can we turn it into a dog pool for the year? That'll sell some tickets.
No, it's the same bastards at IDPH, Bill. They just will never give us any quarter.
Yeah, there you go.
My turn? Yeah, I think stay the course. Of all the different pools and facilities across the state, the beach is unique, and with the size of the beach, I think we're going to be in a much better position than many other places if the state agrees to open those types of facilities. But stay the course.
Thank you. I think we have, unless Josh has anything to chime in, I think we have clear consensus on that one. I would echo the earlier comment that I don't think there's a snowball's chance of hell of that beach opening this year. But so I wouldn't drag it out too long, but I definitely stay the course just to hear what's going on here. All right, and what's the third one?
Last question. This has to do with summer programming. Summer programming includes not only our recreation programs, such as our summer day camps that are often used by families for childcare, but also having the assets ready for use by many athletic organizations we support, like Little League. We have maintenance, staffing, and communication plans in place in anticipation of summer programming. However, we do have a plan for maintenance, staffing, and communication if you choose to forego summer programming right now. So the question is, should we stay the course and be prepared for summer programming, or do you want us to cancel summer programming, which also has, as you know, impacts across the community now?
Yeah, on that point, I would say it's definitely premature to pull the plug on summer programming, especially. I think a couple of commissioners made the point earlier, as did Brad, that once offices and businesses open up again, a lot of parents rely on that summer camp system as their childcare. That could continue to remain popular, and likewise for the athletic programs, being in the industry, it's too early to pull the plug on that. If we got, further guidance in 15 days or 30 days that the summer was flushed, then we can once again react at that point, but it's definitely too early on April 23rd or whatever day it is today to pull the plug on the entire summer.
President Janner, I agree with that. And maybe because I'm kind of an internal optimist, and I think things are going to get better before people think. But I even thought that the June 20th on the beach was a little aggressive. I'd rather, like everyone said, everything's fluid, and I'd rather not be extreme and cancel things way out before. Let's just watch the data and see what happens. And
what do you define as the summer program end date?
Summer programs run through August, so really up until the start of school.
So like August 15th-ish?
Ish, yes.
So if JB extends this order till June 15th, are we still going full steam ahead? I mean, are you going to be able to attract people? Other businesses will be opening potentially, hopefully. I need a haircut. I'm tired of looking like a hippie.
Well,
me too.
I mentioned, for right now, we actually began the registration for our summer camps in the spring program guide. It allows families to plan their summer offerings well in advance. In addition to that, we have a number of other summer programs that take place. Summer camps, we already have over 2,000 participants that are registered for those camps. Many of those camps take place in June, but we have a number that take place in July as well. With our other programs, we have options where, yes, individuals can register for classes that meet at the end of June or during the course of the month of July or early August. So if we were to get the release, whether it's June 1, June 15th, we still have the opportunity, and residents still have the opportunity to participate in programs that we have available through August up until school would start.
So I guess that helps me. The question I'm asking in my head is, do you have to bifurcate the program? The question's asked in a general manner. I think the question may need to be asked in terms of months. So if you've got a program that's running just through June, is that a different answer than a program that runs June through August? Would I rather cancel a program in June and give everybody a heads up now, 5 weeks in advance, that we're out of an abundance of caution, you need to figure something else out? Or do we wait for the governor to cancel it?
Well, the day camps, Commissioner Regan, the day camps could be, you have your finger on the thing about the order, and here's the interesting point of JB's order, is that daycare and day camps may qualify is essential to take care of the kids of essential workers. And today he expanded the group of essential workers by some businesses, including, the people who are going to do curbside delivery of retail, in addition to landscapers and the other things he added. And so as he continues to expand the number of businesses that are back, that's the number of essential workers who have daycare needs. So I think that the model, as I understand it, is built to be prepared on a weekly basis for that. And we might qualify as an essential daycare apart from the recreational programming aspect of it. We might be able to fulfill that role. The question becomes, are we able to do it within the restrictions that he's going to put on more of the daycares as they come through? How many kids, that means how many sites, all the stuff Brad talked about earlier. But to your point about timing, I think it's flexible weekly, Brad, is that right?
Day camps are flexible weekly. Many of our programs, they have options where you can either participate in June or July. It's just how it's listed within the program guide under the same description.
So in addition to the recreation side, we were looking at as a possible revenue source being a daycare provider for essential workers.
And even you'd have some type of abbreviated session or something for the public, right? So even if to Bill's question, if something started in June, it would go 8 weeks, 9 weeks, or whatever it's going to be. You just have it abbreviated to service that need or that.
Absolutely, and that was our messaging with even the spring programs. When this first began and the order first began, we started by canceling classes up through the month of April, planning to, if we were able to return in the month of May, we were just going to run an abbreviated session for those programs. Same concept here. If we have a program that meets in June and July, and it's not a, you register by week type of format, you register maybe for a 6-week format. If we find that we can't run that program until July, we can still run an abbreviated session or look to have makeup classes.
President Janner?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I think what Brad is getting to is the point. This is an extremely fluid situation, and the facts, as we know them, change on an ongoing basis. So I would think this would be something that that Brad would be revisiting on at least a weekly basis to see what makes sense, this week that didn't make sense last week or makes more sense. So I see a lot of changes, and Mike King, right along the lines of what you're saying. Offer abbreviated sessions. We know how quickly people respond when we put registration information up. So yes, this is going to be different. We may not be able to give people as much lead time on registrations, but to fulfill our mission, I think we have to be nimble, and we have to continue revisiting this throughout the summer, given the fact that obviously the governor's office can make decisions that take the decisions off of Brad's desk.
Any other comments on that one? Marie?
Yeah, I agree with what Mike said. I think our mission is to provide recreation to the community, and they're going to be looking to us for those activities. So we should stay the course and move forward. And yes, we're going to have to be nimble. We know that. We will.
All right, so I think the consensus on that one is not to pull the plug on the summer right now, but continue to evaluate and monitor as we move forward. Okay.
So, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments before we move on to the next agenda item here?
Yeah, see if there's support for this, Rich. I think we should have a meeting next week about potential further cuts, get this list of employees and figure out what the main part or main core of employees that need to remain, and whatever policies we may need to change, so be it, but look at those cuts. And we can also have an analysis of the unemployment hit. If we can't get something out of IDS, they're a little bit busy, I would just double what our unemployment cost was from last year, because unemployment's only charged, I don't know, what, the first $16,000 of wages. So don't know if there's support out there for that, but I think that's something we need to look at. People are hurting. We need to have dinners. We need to have the ability to support folks with those dollars.
Yeah, before I go to you, Mike, before I go to you, I just wanted to reiterate, I did get a chance to dig into the details of the board policy, and I know I share with a number of you as well. According to our policy 3.4.5, it reads, the executive director shall be responsible for the hiring, management, promotion, discipline, termination, and other matters related to district employees. So the issue that was being discussed about coming in and making personnel cuts is, according to our duly adopted current board policies, that is not a function of the board. I suppose we can change the policies that you suggested, but to convene a meeting to act on something that we don't have the authority to act on per our own policies really doesn't seem like it would fly. What were you going to say, Mike?
Well, Rich, you just said it far more eloquently than I could have, but that is the point. We have one employee, that's the executive director. If we are dissatisfied with what the executive director does, then certainly within our rights to have that conversation and take appropriate action. But when it comes to action regarding individual employees, that is not our position.
And that was the reason why I asked those questions, is because there's a cost to be prepared to move forward with all these programs, that we just don't pull these people out of anywhere. There's a reason why they're in the place they're in right now. And I don't know, Katie, if you had any information as far as unemployment.
Well, as far as
executive director and elected official.
Right now, Katie has the floor, then I'll go to you, Bill.
Just a point of clarification on the unemployment, the district does not pay a tax. We reimburse dollar for dollar for all claims. Last year, we had 21 unique claims for unemployment. Since April 1st, we've had 35.
Thank you. Go ahead, Bill.
So, yeah, and I stated my idea, if you will, generally on purpose. So it's a policy, we can change the policy. I also referenced making cuts. We can have that meeting next week, and if we want to leave things as they are and we can cut the budget X% and let Ray figure it out, I'm okay with that too. But, you know, with that said, I agree very much with Commissioner McBroom, and capital expenditure cutting. We exist for the benefit of the taxpayers, and we need to deliver services. So if there's support in some motion, some form of that point, I'm okay with going and changing the policy, going in and just talking next week about making a straight cut to the overall budget on what is remaining. We can certainly give the budget back if the demand allows it, but once the dollar is spent, so golf courses, there's minimum maintenance that needed to be done, but we still had the full staff there, more or less. Let's look at the list and make that decision.
Yeah, I don't have any interest in forcing the issue. You know, I just kind of going back to my original comments that you know, the means to offset loss of fee revenue is to cut planned capital expenditures to parks that people pay for, and facilities and things that people are expected to pay taxes. They might be out of work, and our choice has been to cut things that they would expect to get, and it doesn't sound like there's any flexibility or consideration on salary side. I'm not going to press the issue. I just would kind of on record voice my disappointment in the zero flexibility there.
And Josh, and I think that's the point. There needs to be flexibility there.
How much have we cut in the operating budget so far?
Operating budget, 1.2 million.
So we've cut 1.2 million so far, just in the operating budget. So we've not just taken this out on the taxpayer. Is, you know, and I'm not saying that's not that Commissioner, the way you said it, I'm not saying you said it that way, but as I said earlier, every single decision we're making, we're not trying to hurt the taxpayer one bit, but we're just trying to be smart about this. And to Commissioner Egan's point, is to look at everything, analyze everything. Do you need it now? Can you wait? You know, in my discussion with Commissioner Egan this morning, you made a good point. Maybe there are things that will rise to the top that you should bring before us that we will say, hell yeah, go ahead and go with that, because the savings on this long term is great. So we look at this both ways, but we're certainly looking long term. But we've made over $1 million just in operating costs so far.
Those were all variable.
I appreciate that, Ray, and I just, along with Commissioner Carlson's statements, I mean, I have full confidence in you guys. I mean, everyone's great. Everyone's worth every penny. So, thank you.
So I think what Commissioner Broom and Commissioner Egan are saying, maybe I'm speaking for them, is the fact that with the flexibility, and I don't know if it's what form that takes, but the optics are very important. And I think everyone understands the cuts that are being made, but everyone looks to the top. And that's my point. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, for my part, what I'm hearing is from what's been put before us today is that I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Ray staff is saying that we're not going to make any cuts moving forward. We're not making any cuts today further, but I think from what I'm hearing is they're going to evaluate each of these three areas that we just went through, and I'm sure additional areas on top of that. And these governor's orders or other guidance comes down, and we realize that, yes, in fact, we do need to Commissioner Reilly's question about an hour ago, if we realize that, yes, we do need to flush the summer entirely, then Ray and staff will be ready to react to that. I don't think we should leave here thinking that no one's making any cuts. I think we're not making any more cuts today, but the staff is going to evaluate every area, and if and when it's appropriate, they'll do their job and make those hard decisions. Is that an accurate summary?
Yes.
President Janner?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Something that I would say, there are two ways to address this. One is obviously you could say, okay, we're going to do an across the board cut. That's one approach. Another approach is to reduce positions, reduce number of staff. That has already been done, and that has already been talked about by Ray as being on the table. So what you're doing there is you're taking the same work, but having it done by fewer people. So from what my understanding is, that's the approach that's been taken, because the people that I hear, in the boardroom, they're talking, everybody's taken on additional responsibilities and additional jobs. So I think it's just two different ways to get to the same position.
Thank you.
Or both.
Or a combination, hybrid, right?
Or taking on responsibility, and like I've when I was talking to Ray, I've never received a paycheck in my life. Every day, every week has been commission and this is real. This is real. And I get it that it's different between public and private, but when the private people are getting crushed, the optics are important. And that's my biggest point about this whole thing.
And, not only the optics, but, one of the biggest things being talked about in the news and helping my owners that depend on part-time folks that are getting these PPP loans, they're almost better off in a lot of instances over on unemployment. So the owner then is put in a position of either paying back the money and trying to figure out how they continue to survive without putting the employee in a bad position. Or they go back to unemployment and say they were offered a job, they didn't take it, they effectively quit, they don't deserve the unemployment, so that they can meet their 75% FTE thresholds and the other things that are out there. I really do, the government's need and desire to work in a perfect world. Well, I just don't know. I've never worked in a world where I knew for sure. Going back to when I was a controller in September 11th in the travel industry to today and giving folks advice. And I talk to everybody from top 50 CEOs that are clients all the way down to somebody making 50 grand a year. And the conversations are more or less the same. So what we've got is no discussion on how do we defer maintenance and pretend like it's raining and Kevin can't get out there and cut the grass as often as he'd like. People out of all times are the most understandable. I sent an email with a question to a service that I use. Something wasn't working right on the iPhone. Sure, it's user error. And I got an email back and it says, due to these extreme circumstances, don't expect an email back from us in 4 days. We'll try to get to you sooner. And I very much understand that. I have the same issues in my home that everybody else does. My wife's trying to work from home, trying to work through e-learning. I'm trying to work through, well, tax seasons now goes through July 15th, so it's never ending, and trying to come here and help at home. But what I've heard here tonight is an emotional discussion, and you guys are all good people. Please don't ever take my comments otherwise. You are great people. You come from the heart and you care. But we have a business to run at the same time. And that's the issue I think that you're getting, or you're not getting consensus. That's the issue we're all dancing around. And if I have to help force the issue, I'm willing to do that.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, I have a few comments too. We provide a service to the community And it's a little bit different than any other business that you would run. If you run a restaurant, or you run anything else, it's almost as, I work for NICOR. We provide a service community. We have to be there for our community. And I think the Park District is the same thing. It's a very parallel path and parallel missions. And this, we're bound by what Dirk said and what Kevin is saying, by some of the maintenance that we have to maintain these parks. And sometimes we have to spend money. We have to have staff on there to do this. We have made operationally 1.2 million, overall 1.4 or 4.1 million in cuts. Your staff is doing an unbelievable job in this time. So you should be commended by this and what you're doing. And you're living up to the Park District mission. You know, we have to maintain our assets during this time as well too. Because when we come out of this, people they want to get out of the house. Rich, you were saying people are out walking around the house. People want to get to the park. They want to play it. You know, Josh, your kids want to play baseball. You want to coach baseball. Everyone wants those fields ready when this is over. We have to be there and ready for our community. So thank you very much for what you're doing. We got a lot of work to do. People may not see it. People may not see it like you're cutting the lawn, but you're making projects. You're making, you're doing virtual classes. That takes a huge way to kind of flip what you're doing on a dime. So I commend you what you're doing. We're doing a great job. So thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Any other comments? All right, the next item on our agenda is the 2020 calendar. Just want to draw everyone's attention to the fact that, I can't remember if it was Ray or somebody, or maybe it was Brad, somebody circulated the 2020 calendar calling out certain things that were special events, just to give us kind of a sense as to what that looks like moving forward. I don't know that we necessarily need to rehash it. Everybody received it. So thanks for getting that to us. Is there anybody that has any further questions on the calendar that was circulated, if not earlier this week, then the previous week? Okay. Hearing no more comments, looks like everyone absorbed that all right. Next item is Commissioner Recreation Benefits. At the last meeting, it was asked that this be put on the agenda for review. I know the Commissioner Benefit Policy was placed in the weekly packet that's in our board docs, so everyone should have access to that. I guess I've been mainly listening here tonight, but you know, my first thought on this is sometimes when you go through a crisis, you know, you maybe use it as an opportunity to take a shot at things that maybe are not really in any way related to this crisis. I look at these benefits that have been around, I think, since at least 2016 or before, and in reviewing these, I don't see any of these items that are going to cause any issues with regard to the pandemic or trying to come out of the pandemic or anything along those lines. So did any other commissioner want to get into revising these or anything? Or I know, Bill, you have to have this on the agenda, so you can lead us off if you want.
Yeah, and I don't believe the pandemic has anything to do with it, but it certainly highlights an underlying issue that thankfully golf will be opening up, but we should be paying for those things that we use no different than the rest of the public. Now, to the pandemic, we had a whole lot of discussion about how people are hurting, people are out of work, and yet we're going to be able to walk on a golf course for free or take advantage of the 20% discount or some of the other things. You could say, well, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a whole lot of money. I don't know whether it is or not. I don't know that the rounds used by commissioners has been tracked. But if we just use the example that every commissioner, past and present, that's still alive, we'll use the 7 of us that are here, golfed every day at an average cost of $50 a round, 7 days times 7 people times $50 times, I don't know, what do you want to say, 6-month season, 4-month season? Now you're getting to a salary. And those are the things that we just passed on that we wanted to protect. So there is no reason for any one of us to take advantage of any one of these benefits, in my opinion. So I think they should be limited. And I'm happy to make that motion if there's a second out there.
No second here. I think it's ridiculous. I think, none of us, all of us work hard in our regular jobs. And if we have a spare moment to get on a golf course and we devote a significant amount of time being on this board, I don't think that it's a big deal, and it's not really any kind of crazy benefit, in my opinion.
President Janner?
Go ahead, Mike.
I'll defer to Dirk to give a little more color commentary on this. But the purpose of this program is to allow commissioners to get firsthand knowledge and firsthand experience of the programs and the facilities that we have.
So, from a legal perspective, the issue is that you are to serve without compensation. And so that's why over the course of the time I've been your attorney, we have pulled back on these benefits from where they were when I started. Because our advice is that some of those weren't lawful, former commissioners, things like that. The way the law has looked at these benefits is, as Commissioner Reilly just said, it's seen as, in part, while you serve without compensation, it shouldn't also cost you money to audit customer service if that's one of the natures. But that's why we've said if you're going to go out and audit, then it's a space available thing. There are conflicting opinions among the park districts throughout the state of Illinois about whether any of these are appropriate or not. It is a policy decision. Different boards have made different decisions over time. So in terms of whether it's legal or not, I think it passes muster for that, particularly since we have gone to the space available. But the ought question, the normative question, is one that other boards have agreed with Commissioners Carlson and Egan on and said we shouldn't have any at all. And for that reason, they have eliminated the benefit program. So normative question.
I think you misheard me. I did not second that.
Oh.
No, I don't second that.
Sorry, Bobby. I thought you were saying. But anyway, but Commissioner Egan's point that possibility does exist. There are boards who take both positions. But legally, I think the benefits one passes muster. And as we've said, we've refined it over the years I've been your attorney. And there's no reason. There's a motion and a second. No, we have a second. We don't.
No, Bobby didn't second. I thought he did. I'm with you, Dirk. So my question is, in this concept of auditing, we've flowed through the park district thousands upon thousands of transactions in a normal year, not 2020. And we have one audit and maybe some prelim work, Sue can attest to maybe one or two visits and some touch points. So is it rational to audit daily or more than once or twice a year per to commissioner?
Yeah, for my part, I'm not a golfer. I'm more of a Happy Gilmore type. I don't use the benefit. I never have. But for the commissioners that do, I certainly trust their judgment and not, taking up somebody else's time or anything along those lines. So unless there's a second person that wants to push the envelope on this, so far I hear none. Is there a second commissioner that would want to get involved in changing all of this at this point? Okay, so a lot of heads shaking no. So I don't think that one's going anywhere. The next, any other thing? No. The next scheduled meeting is May 14th, 2020 at 7 p.m. It'll be held remotely here from the admin board room, same as today. This time we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn the Board of Commissioners.
Second.
4:23.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.